Hello, I'm Rick Stivers. I'd like to welcome you to YoungMartin'sReels. Today's project is going to be this Okuma Avenger ABF65. Last week we did the Okuma Avenger ABF40, and we're going to take this one apart and see how much difference there is between the two reels, if any, aside from size. So we're going to start off by taking off the spool. There we go. Cut this line loose. All right, the next thing we're going to do is remove the handle. Lock or screw down for the handle, slide that out. Okay, and so far it appears to be just like the Avenger ABF40. Okay, add a little oil here and proceed on. All right. Next, we're going to remove this bait feeder handle. All right, we're going to remove this the same way we did the other one. Just put a screwdriver up under, lift, and it takes a lot more force to do this than it did on the 40 because this is a much bigger piece of hardware here. And I just dropped a little pin out of it. Here it is. Don't lose this little bushing. It goes right in here. There it is, and it fits right inside there, like so. Down in there. Okay. Now we need to remove the rotor. And what we're going to do is we're going to spin this around and make sure that the rotor or the axle shaft is all the way up as far as it will go. Okay, so there it is on the downstroke. We're going to wind it around until it gets to the top. There we go. And the reason we're going to do that is because we don't want to take this all the way off. Well, yeah, we can. Let's go ahead and take it all the way off. And we need to take this nut loose. We're going to take this screw out and remove this. And once we do that, we're going to wind this back down and put this axle shaft all the way down to the bottom so that we can easily remove it once we take the rotor off. Okay. Take out our locking screw. And I'm thinking we're somewhere in the 13mm range. Nope, I'm wrong. We are not. Let's jump down to the 12. There we go. 12 is a good fit. Now, it would take a deep well, a really, really deep well socket to take this off using a ratchet. And I don't have one that long. So what I do is I put it in that position right there. And I will grab the socket with a pair of vice grips. And at other times I've used channel locks, whatever happens to be handy at the moment. And I'll lock them down on it. Okay, slide this down. And now, okay, this is going to be reverse threaded. There we go, and it's loosening up. There goes the nut. We take that off, set it over there. Okay, now before we take this down, or pull this spool off, we're going to go ahead and rotate this around, bring that axle shaft all the way down. And we really could have left it down there to begin with. We didn't really have to bring it up. But I was planning something a little bit different, and we didn't do it that way. Okay, there's the rotor off. With the rotor off, now we'll be able to take this side plate off. See how the side plate would have fit up underneath the rotor? The rotor fits down over top of it like that, and therefore it would have kept this from coming off. So now we can go ahead and remove these screws. It's the same screw. I'm not really sure why the number 2 Phillips didn't go down in there and fit on. Maybe I just wasn't lined up properly. It's a good fit. Okay. Now we've got one screw left. This one over here. Okay, now this one is different from the others. It is smaller and it's silver, whereas the others are gold. All right. So that's the end of that. And we should be able to lift this side cover off. There we go. And we'll be cleaning this up. Don't damage this gasket that goes around here. That helps keep this sealed up. Okay. With that done, let's go ahead now and remove our axle shaft. So we've got this clip here, and this part here is much bigger than what was on the this crosswind block assembly is much bigger than the crosswind block that was on the 40. And on the 40, this came right to an edge right here, so it's much smaller. This one here looks like it's actually going to be much easier to take out because they left like a screwdriver slot to get into over here on the side. Allows you to get over there, get hold of it, lift it out, and pop it loose. And there you go. You got your double C clip out. And we can put it back when we're ready. I'll set that over here to this side. And we should be able to slide out the axle shaft. There we go. Next thing we're going to want to take out is going to be, let's go ahead and take this off. Now before I take this off, I have a really, really bad habit of taking these main gears off and not accounting for all the shims under here. So before we go pulling this off, let's take a look, see if there's any shims above it or below it. Okay, we're gonna check. There's no shims on the top side. Let's see, we got it. Yep, looks like we have shims on the bottom side. Okay, so let's see if we can account for them right now. Okay, that's one single steel shim. And no more? No more. Okay. So we've accounted for that one now, and we will make sure that when this goes back in, that shim makes it in there. Okay, now this is all kind of in the way. So let's see if we can push down back here. There we go. And then rotate this back and see if we can take this main gear out. And we can't because this is fitting over top of the axle shaft. So we're going to have to remove this lever, which means we're going to have to disconnect this spring down here. Okay, so for that, I'm going to use my homemade spring removal tool. And we're going to hook up under there, and I'm going to put a finger on it because it's going to want to pop. And it did, even though I had a finger on it, but it didn't go anywhere. It's still in there. There it is right there. Okay, and now I'm going to remove this screw, which removes this arm. And that should allow us to take that off. Now, we didn't have to do this on the 40, so that means that this gears and arm setup are a little bit different. Okay, all right, there's the arm. We're going to leave the screw sitting on it. There is the spring right there. And I'm afraid that this spring is just going to fall off. So what I'm going to do is, let's see if it can fall off. Now, you're going to have to work, drop the screw down inside it. So let's get that screw out. There we go. Okay, I think you'd have to work at it a little bit to get that to pop off. So we're going to leave it on. Okay, we're going to set this screw right into this hole. And we'll set it over to the side so we can wipe it down and clean it and be ready to reinstall it. All right, at this point now, this main gear should come out. And it's kind of slippery. So I'll clean some of the grease off of it, and let's see if we can lift it out of there. Okay. It's hanging up down below. So, what I'm going to do, and I think it's just that the other side of this is swelled. And so, we'll get to that in just a moment. In the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take out the crosswind block. So let's get hold of it and see if we can lift it up and out of there. There we go. Okay, there's our crosswind block. And now the crosswind gear itself is held in by a screw. So we're going to leave that for the moment. And let's get back to trying to get this gear out. All right, well, what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go ahead and take out the screw holding the crosswind block in. And we will most certainly be putting this screw back in before we put this main gear back on, because you kind of got to go at a little bit of an angle to get to it, but that's okay, because okay, there's the screw for the crosswind block, and here comes the crosswind block. Now we should be able to pull this out, I hope. There we go. Yeah, see, that bearing is stuck on there because there's a small ridge right on the edge of this. See, it's hanging up. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to file that little ridge off of there so that this can come out and off. And that way we can put the bearing in when we put it all back together. And yeah, I'll clean this up. And we'll polish this edge up just a little bit, because that's probably all it's going to take to get that to pop off of there the rest of the way. But it does get jammed on there pretty tight. All right, there's the main gear. Okay, that brings us up to the top up here, back up here. And if you look, now this part here is made just like that 40 was. Oh, sorry. It's made just like that 40 was. It's got the spring over this post, and we're going to lift that spring up and off of that post. There we go. And all right, we're going to get hold of that spring, and we're going to lift it off of there. There we go. Now this one, this is where I'm going to use my safety pin trick. I'll put that spring on the safety pin just to hang on to it. And that really looks to be the same size spring as what was in the 40. So you might check the part numbers later, but it appears to be the same. All right, with that done, we can now remove these 3 screws that are holding in the anti-reverse. Then we're going to remove the bearing retainer. And now if you look right here, we've got some shims that are with this that hold all this together. There are two shim washers here. And they're just round shim washers, all they are. I'm going to drop those over here to the side. Okay, now the rest of this should all slide directly out together. Well, almost all. This is a bit different from the 40. Okay. Definitely different from the 40. All right. Set that right there for a moment. See if we can lift this assembly out. Okay, now, one thing I want to note right here, this piece is marked. If you look right here, there's a dimple right there. And if you look right here on the housing, that little dimple was in that little notch right there. So we're definitely going to want to put that back that way when we put it back. Okay, all right, set that over to the side. And now, you may have a desire to flip this AR switch right here. And if you do, you might very well send a spring flying. No, it's got a different spring setup. The spring setup for this one is in here. Okay, it's got a folded spring right there. Okay, we're still not going to flip it. And there is a screw right there. For some reason, say you had a broken spring here, you can take this screw out right here, and you can pull this out of this handle, but there's a spring in there, and when you reset it, you've got to get that line back up and get it back in there with that spring. So this part here is totally different from what's in the 40. All right. So now we're going to go back down here, and you can look. We're not going to take this completely apart, but if you look, here is a spring. It's got a tag end that comes up and goes through this arm right here. The other side of it goes in here, and it comes out this way. It doesn't go back there. So if for some reason you had one of these that had this off, that's how you could go about finding out how to put it back and put it back in. Okay. But that would be a tough spring to battle. That's got a lot of force on it. Okay, so we're going to leave that in. Now we're going to come back over here, and we're going to loosen the drag over here on the bait runner, and we're going to lift this keeper out right here. There we go. Pops right out like so. With that out, all of this will now come out. And this is how you would get in here to service this. Now, what all is in here? All right. That's almost everything. There is a drag washer in here. And it was stuck to it. Okay. So let's look at the layout of this drag washer before we get back over there onto that AR clutch. Okay, the way that this is going to lay out is you're going to have a drag washer, then this assembly, and another drag washer, and this eared washer, then this spring, then this screw assembly. Okay, and then this would clip back in. So that's got all of those parts out. And what does that leave? That leaves this trip arm right here, which when we go to put this in, we had to bring that trip arm back down in order to get this to go in. This is spring loaded. So far I'm missing where the spring is, so it must be under it somewhere. Yeah, I think it's right under there. Okay, but we're not going to pull that out. We're not going to pull this arm out, because even if you were cleaning this up real good, unless those parts were broken, there's no point in taking those off. Okay, so we're going to go through. I'm going to clean up the parts that I've gotten to, everything except for this assembly, which is now allowing the ball bearings to fall out. And so we're going to come back and take that apart, and I'll show you how that goes back together. But in the meantime, let me go back, clean all this up, and I'll be back to you in just a minute. Most of the parts are now cleaned up, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and reinstall this brake assembly. And we're going to start off by putting this washer on the front, and it should have just a little bit of lubricant on it, not a lot, just enough to keep it from being dry. And put that on like so. And now what we're going to do is, to build this up, we're going to set this all onto this like so. And we're going to put on the next drag washer, which again, just a little bit of grease, not much. Slip that in like so. And now we're going to put in this eared washer. And it's going to go here like this. Now it's got the ears on it, and we put it back in. Those ears have got to line up in these slots right here. Let me see if I can show them to you. Okay, there's a slot here, and there's one on the other side. So those two slots, these two ears right here, these two ears right here have got to line up on those. All right, now for this part, this screws back into here. So let's go ahead and put a little oil on the threads. And this is reverse threaded, so. And it looks like it's the same either way. So let's go ahead, reverse thread that back in like so. Okay, and then we put the spring inside it. And it is not exactly the same each way. That spring should be fitting in. So, let's reverse it around. Yeah, this one hole is bigger than the other. So the small hole goes towards the knob. Small hole goes towards the knob. And then we screw this back in. There we go. And then the spring sits down inside like this. Then all of this goes together like so. And these flats, see these two large flats right here? They've got to go on these two flats on here. Okay, like so. With that done, it may or may not be easier. Let's go ahead and pull it back out real quick and take this part, take it around this way and use it as an insertion tool for putting this in. Okay, slide it in. And get those ears to go in. Okay, remember what I told you about this having to go down? There we go. You have to push this lever down for that to go all the way in. Okay, once I've done that, we're gonna slide that back out. And now we should be able, and if this gives us any trouble, what we can do, let's go ahead and do it that way. Let's set this piece back inside there. Like so. There we go, spring and all, like so. And then screw this back on like that once it's already on there. That way it lines up the flats. Okay, now what we've got to do is get this down, screw it up in there to the point where, oh, yeah, where this piece can now slide back in. Okay. Gotta get it, keep it lined up. There we go. That allows that to slide in. Once that's in, it's locked. And now it's adjustable. Okay, make sure this lever is over here out of the way. There we go. That's got that drag reinstalled. With that done, we can take this side bearing, which I have off of here now, and I have adjusted this and cleaned it up so that it now slides on and off like it should. And we're going to put that bearing down inside like that, and then we're going to oil it again. With that done, we can take our crosswind gear and we're going to take and put a little grease down inside the hole here where this crosswind gear is going to ride. Put a little inside here. Oh, there goes the washer. Okay, and then we're going to take and grease the gear. With the gear greased, we can set it back into place like so, and then we can put this beveled washer back in here like that. And now we should be ready to put the screw back in. I use the old grease trick to make sure that it stays on the screwdriver this time. Okay, this should turn easily, and it does. We're going to stop at that point and go back to our pinion. Okay, we pulled this pinion out. Now, since we pulled it out, we've had 3 of these ball bearings fall out. There they are. And so the rest of them are going to fall out shortly as we take this the rest of the way apart. Normally I would suggest not doing so, but I didn't take one apart that I did, and Chris took his apart and then couldn't figure out how to put it back together. So I'm going to take it apart so we all see how it goes. All right, we got a bearing. This is a bearing retainer. Okay, and it's in good shape. Now that bearing just comes right out. If you feel the need to take that bearing out, it just comes right out like that. Okay, we're going to put it back in now, and we're going to grease it or oil it. We're not going to grease it. We're going to oil it. Okay, set that over to this side. Now here is our anti-reverse gear, and it's going to sit in here. There's more of it falling out. Come on, let's let the rest of you fall out. Come on, there we go. Come on. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pop all of those bearings out. There we go. There. Now they're all out. I'm going to go ahead and take a Q-tip and clean this up a little bit. Now, it was a little bit controversial to some people that I said to put this thing together with grease and then leave the grease in. And I'm going to tell you my reasoning on this. Every one of these I've ever taken apart that was working smoothly had grease or oil on these bearings. Every single one. Every one that I've ever taken out that didn't perform well, had problems, was all covered in rust. And I'm thinking it's going to be kind of hard to rust these pieces up if they've got grease on them. It's supposed to be a friction fit, but if it's a properly functioning anti-reverse, even with grease in there, it's still going to work. Okay, so we've got a shim here and that sleeve. And we're going to wipe off the pinion gear and inspect it. All right, now I'm going to finish my reasoning on greasing these. First off, the grease helps hold them together, without a doubt. Okay, by the way, this pinion gear looks great. This thing, it looks brand new. By greasing them, it helps hold them in place so they don't just fall out. The next thing is that it will keep them from corroding. The other thing is, what I'm thinking is, why do people always say to wipe them clean because it's a friction fit? Well, what I'm thinking has happened over the years is when these things are new and they first come out, they probably come out with grease on them. And then after people use them for a while, and then the grease starts to coagulate in them, then they think, and once it starts to coagulate, these roller bearings can't move inside there like they used to. Once that happens to them, now they can't do their job properly anymore, and people think they're not doing it because of the grease. They take the grease out, they wipe it off, and everything seems to function, so it must be the fault of the grease. Well, it is, because the grease has gotten old. But if you take the old grease out and put new grease in, then that should take care of the problem, because the new grease should allow these rollers to move easily. Okay? So what we've done while I was chatting is we put this shim on, we put the anti-reverse sleeve back on, and now we're going to take this assembly and we're going to grease each of the holes, and we're going to reinstall the anti-reverse bearings in this assembly. And if I do it correctly, I believe that it's going to work just fine, even with grease in it. Okay, so let's start to put these together. Okay, sometimes they can be a little bit hard to get oriented properly. Okay, and we got this one, and this one I have pretty much wiped all the grease out of it, so let's put it back, put some more grease back in there, and try one more time to put that bearing back in. Hopefully you've been seeing these, but they all go in just like that. Okay, with that done, we should be able to sit this back down over that collar. There you go, just like that. And then you've got to put this piece back in. And this is actually the outside portion of the anti-reverse that they have to ride around it. And since there's grease on those, I don't really see any need to put any grease in here. But we are going to go ahead and we got to set this up with that dimple. And we're going to set that dimple right back into that slot right there. Just like that. And if we've done this correctly, we can go ahead and I think I oiled this, but if I didn't, yep, it's oiled. Okay. Now we're going to set this guy back on, and this cutout right here is going to go over here where this is. All right. So let's set this bearing and retainer back on, and that should help align everything properly. Now that slid down. There you go. Okay, we're going to set all of this back in. This right here has got to go over top of that post. Okay, well, let's try it a different way. Let's take this out and let's slide this assembly over top while they're all here. So that's what's going on. Those are not going all the way in. There we go. We still got our dimple right here. Now we've got that piece on. Now let's try to slide it all in. Put the dimple back in the hole it belongs in. There we go. Everything's all the way down. And now it's working. What's not working yet is we don't have this spring back on. So when this spring is in place, yeah, this will work like so, and it'll allow it to turn either way. When the spring is on there and we have the lever in the right position, then it locks it into place. All right, but before any of this gets a chance to fall out, let's go ahead and put the bearing retainer in. It's got this little dimple right here, a little hole for a post to go in, and we're going to put these 3 screws back in. We're going to go ahead and get them each started before we tighten them down. All right, now notice that I didn't put any, I didn't wipe the grease off, and yet that anti-reverse is still functioning perfectly. All right, so now it's time to find the spring that we have carefully protected over here. And we've got to hook it, this tiny little end, back onto this little hole over here, which I can barely even see that there is a hole. It's not correct. Let's try something a little smaller to hold on to it. Oh no, I got lucky. That snagged, but I did not lose it. Okay. There we go. I got it in there. And now we're going to take my spring tool, homemade. There we go. Slide that down on there like so. And now that should function properly when we flip the lever. There's anti-reverse off. There's anti-reverse on. Now we're going to come back. We're going to install the crosswind block. We're going to put some grease in here. Don't get too carried away like I just did. I'll put some in the slot like so, and then we're going to bring this over and slide it down underneath this arm over here and set it in place. Now it's over the post hit back here, and it's under the arm over here. Okay. Now we're going to put the main gear back in. We're going to grease up the teeth. Okay. We're going to slide this down into this bearing. This is the one that was stuck in before. Well, it's no longer stuck there, but we're going to go ahead and slide it back in now. Slide it down. All right. And at this point, we can now come back and we're going to oil this axle shaft. And I don't believe that I ran anything through the pinion to make sure it was clean. So there we go. Now we'll go ahead and put the axle shaft in, spin a little bit as it goes so it can lubricate. And now we've got to line it up on the crosswound block. There we go. And then we've got to get it to line up into the bait release back here. And then we've got to line up these two grooves. Let's see if you can see them. Okay, there's a groove here, you can see it, and there's a groove over here. Okay, this C-clip has got to lock into that. All right, so we're gonna set this back down in here. Like so, and take the clip, snap it down, like so, and then rotate it around. And I'm gonna have to pop it loose a little bit to get it to go back around where it's supposed to be. There we go, like so. All right, that's got that locked in place. With all of that done, now we have this shim that I told you to be careful about earlier. Let's go ahead and slide it on. And we've got our other side bearing. And we're going to go ahead and oil it and slide it on. With those installed, now we should be ready to put this side cover back on. And I see a little bit of grease I missed earlier. Okay. All right. And we're going to slide this back down. Oh, there's our gasket coming off. Got to keep your gasket in place. And what we may have to do is stand it up because that gasket seems to want to fall off. So what we'll do is we'll stand this up sideways like this and then maneuver it until we get everything lined up. And we're missing something. Anybody else notice it? We've got to put this guy back in. Okay, remember we took him off earlier? He goes right over here, over this post, like so. And then we got to put that spring back on. And I started talking to myself just a little bit there and realized it was missing. All right, so we're going to put this screw back in now. Okay, now all we have left to do inside here is hook this spring back up over this post over here. Almost got it. There we go. Get it on the post, slide it down a little bit so we know it's not going to fall off. All right. That's got that guy locked in place. Now we can put the side cover back on. And doesn't look like the gasket's going to fall off this time. There we go. Doesn't seem to feel quite right. Let's give it a little spin. No. There it goes. There it goes. The anti-reverse wasn't, or the bait clicker wasn't fitting where it needed to be. So apparently, let's take it back off and look at it, because it did pop into position. Okay, this lever needs to be up. Okay, so I had it in this position here, down like that. Okay, when I tried to put this on, and it wasn't allowing this to properly activate and click. So take this, pull it over, boom, like that. And that's got all this in the right position now, so that when you put the cover on, everything should fit and operate properly. That was my mistake. Sorry, guys. Sure ain't the first one I ever made, is it? All right, now let's take a look at how it feels. There we go. Much better. Okay, let's go ahead and tighten these, put these screws back in the side. Okay. Nice and smooth. Okay, we're gonna back this out a little bit now. All right, anti-reverse is working. Okay, I think we're ready now to put this spool back on. The spool's functioning well. There's nothing on this side over here to affect anything. And I'm going to suggest that you leave this alone. The only thing I want you to do is go ahead and oil here, oil it here, roll that roller around a little bit, make sure it's spinning. And now, because I've told you to do that, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and take this apart for those who may have it already apart and can't figure out how to put it back together. Okay, so we're going to take this screw out, and we're going to lift this out like so. All right. Now, we're going to take this screw out, and I'll show you how to reset this. But you see how clean this was inside. There was no need for me to take this apart, except to show you guys. So leave it in. Do not take it out. Okay. So this is going to fit in here like so. And we got this. Dennis calls this a Z bar, and I can understand why, because it looks like a big Z. Okay. We're going to wipe the old grease off of it, and then we're going to wipe it out inside. And then I'm going to re-lubricate it with some fresh grease. And then we'll reinstall the Z-bar. Down like so. Okay, and its purpose, it's a trip release is what it is. Okay, when the bail comes across, it hits it and pushes it back up to trip the bail back down. Okay. This piece right here is going to go right here in this slot. And let's get this up as far as it will go. This piece fits under it, down below, like so. If I can get it to stay, I say this is not an easy task. That's why I would prefer you not take these apart once you get to this point. There we go. I'm gonna try to hold that down and see if I can get this to. There's a really, really stout spring on this. So what I'm going to try to do then, because it is so stout, is I'm going to leave this off like this. Okay, and we're going to try to reset this way. I'm going to set it in place over here, and then if you look up under here, let me clean this off real quick. Wipe off the old grease. Okay, if you look underneath here, see this hole right here? Well, that hole is what this spring arm assembly is going to sit into. It's going to sit in like that. Okay. The Z-bar here is going to fit into this slot right here. Okay. So we're going to set this up to do just that. Okay, we're going to bring this around. There goes our Z-bar back out. There we go. I'm going to set that in place with the Z-bar. Okay, that's in there. Okay, now this part here, we're going to put into that other hole. Now you know why I say to leave this alone. And I've done quite a few of these, and it still isn't easy. Not one time have I ever done these when I thought they were easy. Okay. It's right there at the edge. Right there. Okay. Every time I try to bring it around, it falls out. There we go. Every time I say there we go, there it goes. There we go. Got it in. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this screw back in. Okay, finish putting the screw back in. All right, it's all the way in. Okay, now we've got this piece. It's going to slide up over like so. And now you got this one. Now, if you look at this piece, it's got a large hole or large post and a small post. The large post goes into this hole down here, and the small post is going to go into this small hole on here. So we're going to slide this up, large hole down, slide this up, and get it to lock into place in that hole. That's what I said. This is one of the toughest springs I've ever encountered. Okay, now it's locked in that. Do not move this or it's going to shoot out of there and go flying. Okay, slide this back in. Get it to line up on that hole. There we go. Now the small hole post is in, and there's the screw. And I keep doing this because I know that there's people out there who don't understand. Every time I think I need to stop doing this, somebody calls me or sends me a text saying, hey, you didn't show how to do this, and now I can't get mine back together. Okay, there you are. There's how to do it. The other side, there's nothing to it. It's just a screw. Okay, this is working functionally, doing its job. Now, if you took this part off up here, let's go ahead and pop that off part real quick, just in case. Plus, it allows us to check the bail spring wire and see if it's lined up properly. And it is. Well, that's perfect. Okay, it just sits right in place. Okay, so on this side here, you're going to have this screw. On this side over here, you'll have this spacer right here. It's going to fit in there like that. Okay, so you've got that, and you've got this roller, and then inside the roller, you've got this little bitty bearing. Okay, there's the bearing. Okay, we're going to oil that independently. And there's a plastic washer on there, but I'm not going to force it off of there. Okay, so we're going to put the bearing on there, give it a little spin. We're going to put the roller back on, slip it into place like so. We're going to slide this guy back in like so. And then all of that comes and sits right back down into place, and the screw goes in. See our arm right here, our Z-bar? See how it moves up and down? Okay. Now, before we put this on, we've got these two shims. They've got to go back on. They come down here, and they're spacers for this to keep it in the right location. Okay, then we're gonna slide the rotor back on, like so. Okay. We're gonna put our nut back on. And remember, it goes reverse threaded. And now I'm going to tighten that down. There we go. And it's going to have this locking screw. Which we're going to install right here. Okay. Perfect. All right. Now we're ready. Slide the clicker cog back on, and it's keyed. Got a flat spot on it. It's a D keyway. We're gonna slide it in, line up the keyway with the flat. There it is, like so. It's on the opposite side from me. And then we've got this washer, which we're gonna put in. There we go. And we're not ready to put that back on yet, but we are getting really close. Let's go ahead and slide the handle back in and secure it with the handle screw. All right, very nice. Now we're gonna come back over here and we're gonna redo the drag washers on this. We'll pop out the spring that holds it, and we're gonna peel all these out. Wow, it's got a huge stack of drag washers, and I think this is a bit over lubricated. Maybe not, but it appears that it is. It looks like it's lubricated with grease. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take a minute to go through and clean all these out, and we're going to go back and lubricate them with oil. But for the meantime, I'll go ahead and do this. That didn't take very long. It appeared that someone had greased the felt drag washers in this with Penn fishing reel grease. They are felt washers, so they should be oiled and not greased. And who knows, maybe I did it years ago. I don't know. But here's the way this stack goes. Okay, it goes felt washer, keyed washer, felt washer, eared washer, felt washer, keyed washer, felt washer, geared washer, or eared washer, felt washer, keyed washer. So each of these should be oiled when we put them in. And we don't need to get too overly carried away with the oil, especially with all the grease that was in them. I got most of it cleaned out, I think. And would that have prevented it from working? No, it probably still would have worked okay. But I think you might have to overly adjust the drag down to get it to actually hold. And that's another difference between this and the 40 is the 40 had a 6 drag washer stack. This has a 10 drag washer stack. So this is designed to be much heavier. Okay, one thing that seems to be missing out of this, and I do believe it was probably supposed to be here, is there is supposed to be a rubber seal that fits in here that if you go back and look at the 40, you'll see that it's there in that one. And this snap washer fits into the second groove, whereas the rubber seal fits into the top groove and up here. I don't know if you can see it, but there is a groove here, and there should be a rubber seal that fits into that. But It's okay. All right. So that's serviced. Okay, let's go ahead and add a drop of oil onto the clicker down here and just a little bit on the spring to help keep it from corroding in the event that it ever gets addressed to salt water. And then we're going to slide this on and we're going to rotate it. And by rotating it, we are allowing it to align with the axle shaft. There you go, and it dropped down. Okay. So now we're ready to reinstall the knob, the adjuster, and crank it down. Okay, and there you have the Okuma Avenger ABF65 serviced, properly running. Nope, almost serviced and properly running. We still got to put our bait runner back on. Okay, so we can hook this up on this side over here, line it up, get it to line up, and then we've got to lift this side up and over, and I do that with a screwdriver on this side. There we go, like so. And then we can put the screw back in. All right, now, all right, let's activate the bait runner mode. Now this should be easily turned, and it is. We should be able to tighten it down. And we can. Okay, and we wind it. It's supposed to come out of bait clicker mode and go to a heavy drag, which it did. And anti-reverse is functional. Anti-reverse override is functional. And this beast is ready to go to the coast and do some fishing. For now, that's Rick Stivers with Young Martin's Reels, signing out.